The ambulance bay exploded into chaos just before sunrise. Sirens screamed through the cold Kentucky air as helicopters circled above the trauma center like restless birds. Stretchers rolled across the pavement one after another, each carrying men whose uniforms were torn, stained with blood, and covered in dust from a mission no one yet understood. Doctors rushed toward the incoming casualties while nurses scrambled to prepare operating rooms. Amid the panic stood the newest nurse in the emergency department, 26-year-old Grace Morgan, gripping a tray with trembling hands. She had been working at Liberty Memorial Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky, for only 3 weeks. Many believed she was too young, too inexperienced, and far too quiet for a day like this. Before the first patient even reached the trauma bay, the chief surgeon looked toward Grace with a smile that carried more mockery than confidence. He assigned all 5 critically injured special operators to the rookie, expecting she would fail under pressure. None of the experienced staff imagined that before the day was over, every one of those wounded heroes would be asking for only one nurse, Grace Morgan. If you believe kindness, compassion, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing inspiring stories that remind the world that humanity still exists. Grace had dreamed of becoming a nurse since childhood. Growing up in a small church community outside Nashville, Tennessee, she watched her mother volunteer at homeless shelters and care for elderly neighbors without expecting anything in return. Her father, Michael Morgan, worked as a mechanic, teaching her that true character was revealed when nobody was watching. Those lessons stayed with Grace throughout nursing school. She graduated near the top of her class, but excellence in textbooks did not automatically earn respect inside one of the busiest trauma hospitals in America. Some senior staff dismissed her as another nervous graduate who would disappear after the first truly difficult shift. That morning tested every fear she had ever carried. The helicopters landed one after another, bringing 5 members of an elite special operations team injured during a classified rescue mission. Broken bones, severe burns, collapsed lungs, internal bleeding, and traumatic injuries overwhelmed every available trauma room. The hospital entered emergency disaster protocol. Every physician was assigned multiple critical patients simultaneously. Grace barely had time to breathe before she found herself responsible for coordinating care between surgeons, respiratory therapists, radiologists, and intensive care staff. Her hands shook while she inserted 4 lines, prepared medications, and monitored vital signs, yet her voice remained calm. Every instruction she gave was clear. Every movement was careful. She remembered something her nursing instructor, Rebecca Collins, had once repeated. Fear was normal. Panic was a choice. The chief surgeon, Dr. Jonathan Reeves, believed the assignment would expose her weaknesses. He expected delays, confusion, and mistakes that would justify transferring the patients to more experienced nurses. Instead, something unexpected happened. Grace noticed tiny details others missed. One operator's oxygen levels suddenly dropped despite stable monitors. While everyone focused on another patient, she realized his breathing pattern had changed only slightly. Acting immediately, she alerted the trauma physician. A hidden pneumothorax was discovered before it became fatal. Minutes later, another patient's blood pressure began falling almost invisibly. The numbers had barely changed, but Grace noticed the color draining from his fingertips and recognized the signs of internal bleeding before any alarm sounded. Surgeons rushed him back into surgery just in time. Hour after exhausting hour, she remained beside the 5 wounded men. She never treated them like anonymous soldiers. She learned their names. Caleb Turner, Nathan Brooks, Samuel Carter, Joshua Bennett, Benjamin Hayes. Each carried photographs of family tucked inside protective pouches. Grace carefully removed those photographs before surgery, placing every picture inside labeled envelopes so nothing would be lost. Small acts that nobody instructed her to perform slowly became the reason the patients trusted her. As daylight faded, exhaustion settled across the hospital. Coffee cups covered every nursing station. Surgeons leaned against walls between procedures. Families gathered in waiting rooms praying for miracles. Grace had not eaten since arriving before dawn. She refused every break. When another nurse insisted she rest, Grace quietly answered that those men had not been able to rest while protecting strangers. She could wait a little longer. Her compassion spread quietly through the emergency department. Respiratory therapists began volunteering extra time. Housekeeping staff stayed late without complaint. Even skeptical nurses started asking whether Grace needed help. The atmosphere inside the trauma unit changed. Instead of fear controlling everyone, purpose took its place. Late that evening, the wife of Caleb Turner arrived carrying 2 frightened children. She had driven nearly 6 hours after receiving the emergency phone call. Tears streamed down her face as she entered the intensive care unit, terrified she might already be too late. Grace met her before anyone else. She explained every procedure in simple language. She answered every question honestly. She admitted what doctors still did not know. Most importantly, she stayed beside the family during the longest night of their lives. When Caleb finally regained consciousness after surgery, the first thing he asked through weak breaths was whether the young nurse with kind eyes had made it through the shift. Grace smiled. She was still there. The following morning, another operator woke after emergency surgery. He had suffered severe blood loss and remembered almost nothing after arriving at the hospital. Nurses introduced themselves one after another, but he interrupted only to ask if Grace was nearby. One by one, all 5 patients requested the same nurse. Not because she possessed supernatural medical abilities. Not because she performed dramatic rescues. They asked for Grace because she never treated them like heroes or statistics. She treated them like human beings. News spread throughout Liberty Memorial Hospital. Doctors who had quietly doubted her now watched with growing respect. Medical students followed her during rounds, amazed by her ability to notice subtle changes before machines detected them. Families requested Grace after hearing stories from other patients. The rookie nurse no one believed in had become the heartbeat of the trauma unit. Several days later, Chief Surgeon Jonathan Reeves reviewed every chart from the emergency response. He searched for mistakes, convinced that beginner's luck had exaggerated Grace's reputation. Instead, he found meticulous documentation. Perfect medication timing. Early recognition of complications. Accurate communication. 0 preventable errors. For the first time in years, the veteran surgeon admitted to himself that he had judged someone far too quickly. A week later, the 5 recovering operators gathered for physical therapy. Walking remained painful. Some relied on wheelchairs. Others struggled with crutches. Recovery would take months. Grace entered quietly carrying fresh coffee for family members waiting nearby. Every one of the recovering soldiers looked toward her at the same moment. The room fell silent. One after another, they stood as best they could despite their injuries. It was not military protocol. It was respect. One of the therapists later admitted there was hardly a dry eye anywhere in the rehabilitation wing. The hospital administration organized a small ceremony recognizing everyone involved in the emergency response. Doctors received awards. Trauma teams received certificates. Administrators delivered speeches praising teamwork. Near the end, something unexpected happened. The 5 operators requested permission to speak. Their commanding officer walked slowly onto the stage. He thanked every employee for saving lives during the worst day his team had ever experienced. Then he said something nobody present would ever forget. He explained that courage was often imagined as running toward gunfire or surviving impossible missions. But real courage also appeared inside hospital rooms, where someone chose compassion instead of comfort, service instead of recognition, and hope instead of fear. He pointed toward Grace sitting quietly in the back row, hoping no one would notice her. The entire auditorium rose in applause. Grace lowered her head, overwhelmed. She had never wanted attention. She only wanted every patient to return home. After the ceremony, Dr. Reeves approached her privately. His voice carried none of the pride that had defined him before. He admitted he had underestimated her because she was young. He admitted assigning the 5 operators to her expecting failure. He apologized sincerely. Grace accepted without hesitation. She understood that forgiveness often healed more deeply than revenge. Months passed. The 5 operators completed rehabilitation. Before returning to active service, they visited Liberty Memorial Hospital together. Instead of bringing expensive gifts, they donated funds establishing the Grace Morgan Compassion Scholarship, helping future nursing students who demonstrated exceptional kindness rather than simply academic excellence. The scholarship became one of the hospital's proudest traditions. Years later, new nurses arriving at Liberty Memorial heard stories about the rookie who quietly changed an entire hospital culture. They learned that excellence was measured not only by skill but by empathy. They learned that every patient carried a story beyond the injuries visible on scans and monitors. Most importantly, they learned that the smallest acts of kindness often became the memories people carried long after wounds healed. Grace never became famous. She never sought interviews. She never wrote books. Every morning she simply tied back her hair, clipped on her identification badge, whispered a short prayer asking God to help her serve someone well that day, and walked back into the emergency department where another stranger would soon need hope. Perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. Heroes rarely announce themselves. They show up. They stay calm. They choose compassion when nobody is watching. And sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the very one who reminds us what humanity truly looks like. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support allows these messages of hope to reach even more people. Red Heart # special request, before you leave, comment below with the words, "Kindness makes heroes." We'd love to know where you're watching from. In the end, the 5 wounded operators returned to duty carrying scars that would remain forever, but each of them agreed on one truth. They had survived because skilled doctors fought for their lives, but they healed because one humble rookie nurse reminded them they were never alone. Grace Morgan proved that greatness is not found in titles, rank, or recognition. It is found in ordinary people who choose extraordinary compassion when the world needs it most. And perhaps somewhere today, another quiet soul is about to discover that the greatest strength anyone can possess is simply a heart willing to care.